So I want to welcome everybody. Many of you I know, but some I'm meeting for the first time. My name is Michael Goldberg, and I am the executive director of our Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship, and I'm also a faculty member at Weatherhead. I've got Peter B. Lewis in the background for Jose to get all teary-eyed, remembering walking the halls of our building. And it's great as part of our alumni speaker series to welcome back to campus Jose Diaz. I got to know Jose as a student when he was getting his MBA, and we got to travel together on our international course. And during the time he was working for Goodyear in Cleveland, we were lucky enough to see him. I know Tiffany McNamara is on from ThinkBox. Jose and the Goodyear team spent a lot of time in ThinkBox and have been great partners with us on competitions and hiring students. And so when we were thinking about alums to invite to our speaker series, we were thrilled that Jose could join. So I also want to welcome Lauren, who is one of our undergraduate students from Case Western Reserve, who will be moderating the discussion. Lauren has had a very interesting journey in 2020, which maybe you can give them a little, tell them about, but she just basically got stuck in Kenya visiting families that did her spring semester remotely in Kenya and just came back to the US in August and has been interning this summer for one of our awesome alums, Hallie Tecco at Natalist. And so it's awesome to have Lauren moderating. So I will turn it over to Lauren. For those who haven't been on our sessions before, please let us know via Zoom if you have a question that you want to ask Jose. We'd like this to be as interactive as possible. And if you're on LinkedIn, just put a note in the comment and what your question is, and we'll make sure we check LinkedIn and relay it to Lauren. And this should be a lot of fun. So Lauren, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Butia. I'm a second year at Case Western. I'm majoring in business management with a minor in biomedical engineering. Thank you, everyone, for coming today to talk to Jose about basically his life's journey. He's a Case Weatherhead graduate with an MBA in strategy, design, and innovation. For the past 5 years, he's actually been a senior manager at the San Francisco Innovation Lab at Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, where he creates new ideas and spearheads many projects. Jose is also head and founder of AndGo, a revolutionary sustainable company that connects electric cars to servicing and maintenance. Jose has stayed in close contact with his alma mater, Case Western. Just last year, he won Case Western's Young Alumni Award. And this award is given to individuals that have shown high achievements in their career before reaching the age of 35. He created a competition that challenged Weatherhead students to design certain projects to expand and add value to their graduate experience. So it's so wonderful having a highly accredited individual here in our midst and our speaker series to talk to today. So thank you so much for coming. I just wanted to firstly get a little background of just how you started life in Costa Rica, and then figuring out you wanted to pursue a graduate degree, and then coming to Case Western, and then turning that into a profession in such a awesome company, Goodyear, and then figuring out underneath that how to create kind of a little empire for yourself in AndGo, and just that whole journey.
Yeah, thank you so much for the intro. That was way too kind, and I appreciate it a lot. And so I see also a lot of familiar faces joining today. So probably you guys heard me talk about, my coming to Weatherhead at multiple events. But I'm from Costa Rica, born and raised there. And I went to design school in Costa Rica to a kind of like the Costa Rican Institute of Technology. So it's kind of like a famous school in the area for technology, but I did my design degree there. And very quickly, I actually wanted to be first like a furniture designer, and I wanted to like build furniture and work with like wood and materials like that. And that switched very quickly in the first year, and I started doing more digital design and started doing more prototypes on the computer, and just, got way more interested in that path, and worked to that for, for the rest of my undergrad degree there. And that kind of led me to just do like, a lot of websites and a lot of design work for different people. And but I always decided to like research and try to understand like what would make, a website better than another one, what kind of tests you can do, etc. That kind of led me into a job with an institution called INCAE, which I think Michael might have heard the name. It's kind of like a famous institution in Central Latin America because it was founded by Harvard in, I think, the 60s, 70s, when actually JFK came to Costa Rica in one of his visits and to Latin America. And he asked all the presidents of Latin America, of Central America there, what do you guys need from the United States? And they all said in agreement, we need a business school. So he came back to the US, wrote a letter to the dean at Harvard, and the INCAE project started. So INCAE is this like kind of little gem hidden with offices or buildings in Nicaragua and Costa Rica. And I went there and I did kind of like 3 years of research in new media, technology, design. And it was really cool, really interesting. I was working with people that were just coming from Harvard and MIT, and we're just doing research in Latin America. So it was an incredibly rich experience. And I immediately noticed this big kind of like gap in design, which is business, of course, right? And strategy, and thinking about like what I call the front end of the whole design process, right? Normally a designer, when you work for an agency or just a creative company like an ad agency or an illustration agency or a digital production agency, you kind of get like a brief from a customer that kind of tells you, this is what I'm trying to do because of X, Y, and Z, and this is what I need you to do. And that's pretty cool, but you kind of like that's your starting point. And when I was working at INCAE, I realized that there's so much that was happening before. All the assumptions were already made before that starting process. So I started getting really into like design in management, design in business, realizing the kind of like intersections between desirability, what the user wants, which is what I would study a lot, buyability, which is what the business can actually do and do it in a way that makes, profit, revenue, and then the other one would be like technology. What is actually feasible in all of that? So like pushing the boundaries of technology while being very user-centered, while having some sort of business model in place that you can work with. So like design as a whole thing wasn't incorporating those things, but as I was in INCAE and I was studying and working on these things, I realized that I needed to build a bridge between design and business. So I started doing some research into like, what should I study next? Where should I go? And the typical path that was recommended to me by my mentors at that time and professors from design school is you got to go to Europe, or you got to go to the US and get like a degree in like design strategy or design something, right? And I met a person that actually studied at Case for a while, did his PhD there, Hector, and I think some of you remember Hector. And Hector was doing his PhD in organizational behavior at Case at Weatherhead. And he was like, no, come on, guy. Like, what you got to do is go to a business school where you're not going to know anything and it's going to be harder, but you're going to be more well-rounded at the end, instead of going to a design school where you're going to be with your own group of people and it's going to be more of the same. He was like, really go and push yourself and try to do it differently. And here's this school called Case. I think you might like it. And as I was reading about Case, I realized that it was actually Michael, this is where we actually met. You were teaching a few classes there, and one of the classes I took was with Michael and Dick Buchanan, a professor at Case as well. And I've been following Dick for a while. I've been reading his papers and kind of like really getting into his way of thinking about how expansive design is and how you can use design for mostly anything, really, when you're solving a problem. And I was like, all right, I really want to go there. And that kind of landed me eventually into applying to the MBA, getting in the program and starting somewhere around 2015. Yeah, I think. So yeah, sorry. And I think you had a two-part question, but I might have summarized it the first one.
Yeah, so that's great. That's a really cool journey of how that definitely escalated. I did want to ask, when you did come to Goodyear, could you explain before COVID, how was a day-to-day like? What were your tasks? How did you have to manage other people? What did you learn? Was it hard? Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, COVID is a transformational, life-changing experience for anybody. There's definitely the more I reflect on it, the more I found like things we've done well, and things we haven't done well, specifically for my team. But before COVID, it was a very typical relationship of having a satellite office here, the one I run in San Francisco, and having headquarters and lots of communication. We would do a lot of work in what we call the new ecosystem of mobility, which are all these kind of like new trends coming up that are becoming businesses, like electrification of vehicles, electrification of energy supply, autonomous vehicles, shared mass transportation, new models in shared transportation as well. So we would have like constant communication. We would have executive trips, happening every quarter, if not more often. Just last year, I think we hosted our CEO 3-4 times, our CTO around the same time, and lots of other executives. So in a lot of ways, like 20-30% of my time has been to kind of do those, we call them like executive trips, executive safaris at times, go and show them what's happening here, go and show them what we're doing, etc. And so that was very common back in the day. And it was actually really, really good. It was like this really healthy shared of information where, people needed to see firsthand, what was happening and how were other companies, struggling with some of the changes, right? Now COVID happened, and, the first question is like, how do you maintain those channels? What do you do now, right? Because what you want to do when you have a satellite office is you want to, you want to show consistently value in a way that people are reminded that you're there in San Francisco and it's the most expensive market in the world, or one of the most expensive markets in the world. And you have, all these people working. What are you guys doing? This shouldn't be like a facility where here's some money and let us know in a couple of years what happened. Like, this is more of a facility that just constantly is talking back and showing what we're doing, right? So when COVID happened and we couldn't have those face-to-face anymore, first of all, it was concern about our actual team, right? Making sure that people were okay, making sure that people were safe, making sure that people were mentally okay. And it is because, everybody went from working in this vibrant environments, like, normally everybody in my team would actually use public transportation to go to San Francisco, where our office is downtown. So imagine the amount of people that you interact, that you see, you walk, you get there, you go in the building, you go to the elevator, you walk into the office, you're there with a lot of people. From that to being in your room, in your living room. And the first month was really hard, but then it kept getting longer and longer, and we're still in this, right? So immediately you start hearing about either people just not being able to concentrate because they had kids with them, or they had other situations, or burned out because they were working then like 12 hours in a row because there's just nothing else to do. All these things that we have to like start working with our team to make sure that, we had the right boundaries and we would support them the right way. We instituted, and then like, what about that social connection that I think just makes teams work better, right? So I remember that I think that the first 2 months after things get a little stable, after a few weeks, we did every other week, like Wednesday happy hours, and, just like adding more social stuff like that. The cool thing about that is we had our CTO and our CEO at different happy hours join, and just like literally join the event, and like, we're with a drink chatting with our people and everything. And I think all those things just like alleviated so much pressure on how we would do it, but that was a way for us to keep that connection going, right? I actually have another happy hour at the end of this month where our CEO is going to come back and join the team and meet the new faces, because we've been hiring in the last month and a half. So I think that our life has changed dramatically. Like the before and after is so dramatic that it's even hard to think of, right? But I think that a team like ours has been very lucky that we worked on a very digital process. We do constant integration, continuous development, CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development for software development. We work on Agile. We work on Jira to keep track of everything. So we're like a very digital process-wise team. So for us to have everybody spread out and not meeting, it was actually pretty okay. We follow like every day. We have stand-ups. At the end of 2 weeks, we demo everything. We produced everything. So we actually saw an increase in productivity, which we measured every 2 weeks. So for us, it was more like, whoa, we're getting too productive. Like, let's make sure that people are taking rests and breaks and giving people vacation and et cetera, right? So a lot of that was mental health and just bringing it, up one-on-one with people and seeing how they're doing. So I feel that my role as the head of this office here and the projects that we have in other regions has been a lot more of that, of just being really sensitive about people's situation and where they are and how we can help them, manage those things.
It seems like you're doing a great job. I know that the going from something so normal and then having it completely switch, and then everyone is just pretending it's normal, and then we're adjusting, but then really going back to mental health, I think that's great that we've realized that that's something that we need to actually take into consideration. But I did want to ask, choosing Goodyear as a company, I think that a lot of the students in this forum would love to hear the story behind, working there as a graduate, in an internship position, and then turning that into a profession that you've had for multiple years now.
Yeah, for sure. When I came to CASE, I very quickly realized the ecosystem in Northeast Ohio and in the Midwest, and I was really drawn to, and I think you and I, Lauren, we talked about it the other day. I remember reading on Wired magazine the Industrial Revolution 4.0 and how they were talking about, how the first revolution happened and there were some digital revolutions, and now one with more materials and mechanical components had to happen, which was the Industrial Revolution again of, and it was worked a lot in the Midwest, et cetera. I was really interested in all of that. And very clearly, Ohio, Cleveland being such a heavy industry region, right, with companies like Goodyear or Sherwin-Williams and et cetera, right? And you obviously have new innovations around mechanical and biomedical startups, et cetera. But it was very heavy in that with, also metals, et cetera. So when I came to CASE and I started kind of realizing what was my path moving forward, I got really into the idea that the United States built, huge economy a lot of times, using the platform of the industrial regions of the US to be able to grow so much, specifically in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And now that was shifted dramatically to, Boston and Silicon Valley and other regions as the now new focuses of, innovation. And I just thought, well, but it could happen from here. It still can happen here. It still could happen from here. And actually, the hardest innovation period that we're going to see, the hardest revolution that we're going to see is when we actually start now, doing big things with materials, with nanomaterials, with industry again, when we can actually produce close to where we live, and there's a more sustainable impact on our production in our regions and cities, et cetera. So I really quickly understood, okay, I'm going to have to, or I could find really good opportunities within this ecosystem here around CASE, and try to bring in my own kind of angle to it of digital work and some sort of design work that I could do. But it was kind of hard because, you know, when you come from Costa Rica here, you don't come in and say, oh, I want to go in and work for a tire company, right? And you actually don't understand what a tire company is innovating in. Like, are they doing a new tire and cool? Like, you know, what is that? And a lot of people, like when we opened the office here, they would be like, oh, it's so cool. Goodyear is in Silicon Valley in San Francisco. Why? And you know, that was a very legit question that we all had to answer ourselves and figure out what was the mission and vision of what we're doing. But I do remember very clearly, I was walking Weatherhead and PVL, and Julie, you might have heard this story, but Meenakshi was walking and she said, Jose, I told you Goodyear is here and you should go to their information session. And I was like, I know Meenakshi, and Meenakshi was, she was heading our career management office at that time. But now she left Weatherhead. I think she's somewhere else. But the point there is, she was telling me, I met with the person that is hiring, and I think it's very interesting. You should go. And I was like, Meenakshi, this is a tire company. I know I should work for some sort of industry, but like, I'm not sure if like tires is something that I've been like thinking about. She's like, just go and check it out. I followed her advice. I went to the info session, and I met actually my boss, who's been my boss at Goodyear since I joined Goodyear, Erin Spring, and she was talking about this whole idea of like, all right, Goodyear, you know, makes tires and makes money selling tires and makes good money, but what is the future of that, and how can we create new businesses inside of Goodyear that are not necessarily tied to selling tires? And they did it in a way where they said, well, we're going to do a kind of design approach to finding out customer needs and identifying changes in the industry, and then coming up with concepts that can go and later be tested as businesses. And it was kind of like the whole process was explained to us in this info session. And I was hooked because that was exactly what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to be able to work at a place that wanted some change and had a process and would value design and kind of like an entrepreneurship mentality. And then very quickly, the other people there, I met people in the team. Aditi, Michael was there, and she, you know, she's now at Honda, I think, but she was with that team, and she came from the MEM program at Weatherhead, and there's other people from the entrepreneurship programs at Dartmouth and other schools, and it just felt like a different group of people. So I was like, okay, I'll you know, I applied, I interviewed, I got the internship. And then something really cool happened. My boss during my internship, she was on maternity leave. So they kind of assigned me to a project. And I say this, you know, safely without a lot of supervision. And the project was, we had this big customer to whom we sell commercial tires. And this big customer goes to the border between the US and Mexico. And then those trucks go into Mexico. And a lot of the times they come back with bad tires or change in tires. And that sounds like a very petty issue, but in the scheme of greater things, the amount of trailers that were going down, this customer was losing millions of dollars. So they sent me to the border to do user research, and it's like, what's going on? What is this process like? So we were there figuring out the process. I had to cross the border and, you know, every day and check out the inspection points, understand how they were doing it, map the whole thing. And it was just fascinating. I came back to Goodyear headquarters with this like huge map of all the inspection, all the processes, all the things. And I was like, this is a process made for error. Like, there's so many points where you can actually change and steal or just like lose a tire. And, you know, nothing really came out from that. Like, we didn't do anything more, but at least we knew what the problem was. And from a design research perspective, it was very fulfilling. So later on, you know, that project went really well. It started the RFID and tire project for commercial tires, which is how do you actually keep track of the tires with sensors. And then I landed the job later on when I graduated. So that's kind of how I landed into Goodyear at the beginning.
Awesome. That's really great to hear. I love that story. I think it worked really perfectly. And I feel like a lot of, at least many people in my situation where we're still in college and we're kind of like, how's our career going to go? Like, and it's worked seamlessly for you. So I think it just brings a lot of joy for us because we are excited for something like that to happen for us. I do see a question here from Igor, I believe. So I was just going to read that out. So
maybe if people are okay, he can just unmute and ask it directly.
Yes, also that too.
Sure, happy to ask. Hi, Jose. I'm a Weatherhead management accounting student and also on a data analytics track. And I've also got a little bit of an entrepreneurial background, and I was just curious how you manage to work in innovation and serve as an innovation manager for such a huge and well-established company. Goodyear is over 120 years old. And whether you have any challenges.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, there are a lot of challenges, but it's like, I'll use the word that our CTO Chris also explained it, and he's kind of like one of our main sponsors. He said, you got to keep working on the old company and keep maintaining that, but you got to build a new. So that works really well, and it's very poetic. What that really means when you're actually in the weeds working is when you're building the new, it means that you got to then build new processes, you got to build a new culture, and you got to set up new ambition. So new processes, like biggest challenges we have is understanding with IT, with legal, with cybersecurity, with HR, with talent acquisition. How can we work and operate in the new space, in the new mobility space as a small team here, hiring faster, understanding turnover, taking more cybersecurity risks, using different IT tools, taking in new kind of talent that didn't exist before in the company, and bringing them along and using them to grow the product, and then setting up a whole different ambition that is not tied to selling tires. So how do you do that? That I think is where the art strategy comes in. You got to build a strategy. You got to communicate it. You have to have, in my opinion, because I've seen it happening the other way, direct links to executives, and you got to build and nurture those, where you can sporadically meet with your CEO and explain what you're trying to do and get him on board with the change. And very continuously, in our case, meet with our CTO and explain to him what are some of these specific challenges that we have. Always come up with solutions to a problem and say, we have this big problem right now, but this is what we think we can do and how we're doing it. So that's how we've managed that balance. And at the same time, I think a good metaphor I like is our lab here is kind of like a satellite revolving around the sun, and Goodyear is the sun, that 120-year-old company. If you get too close to the sun, you burn out. If you move too far away, you lose your gravitational pull and you drift into space. You become irrelevant. So if I start saying to our executives that I want to build autonomous cars, and Goodyear, I want you to be a player in the autonomous car industry in the way that we're going to be a provider of vehicles, then I drifted so far away that I'm just no longer relevant anymore. But if I come in and say, I'm going to be working on a new rubber material, or I'm going to be working into this process that is really tied up to the operations, then I'm probably not the best team to do that. I don't have the right resources and materials. So I burned out, I dilute inside of the company, right? So it's a matter of like the new and the old, being able to manage those cultural changes, and at the same time, understanding what's your space of work that you're going to be relevant and bring value to the company by, because when you have like entrepreneurial, let's say, freedom to go and say, here's an idea, let's go and do it, we need this much money or this many resources, you can get really wild and you can come up with a lot of things, but it's always like, how do you attach those things to the company, and how do you do it in a way that makes sense for the people giving you the support that are going to make you successful and stay open in the long run. I hope that answered the question, Igor. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. That's very interesting, finding that core level of balance.
Cool.
Hi, Jose. My name's Prabha. First of all, thank you so much for being here. I've been taking some really interesting notes since you started talking and since I got on the call, and it's been extremely engaging so far. So what I wanted to touch on is I'm extremely interested in sustainability at every level, and I would just wanted to ask, to what extent do you think that sustainability has an impact on the future of what it is we can accomplish as change makers, or in your personal life, how has that affected you in the way that you, I don't know, run your house, or just in your daily life, how has your sustainability practices affected the way that you live?
So do you mean the way that we live? Like, I mean, me personally here in San
Well,
Francisco?
I mean both, in as a personal connection, but also as a community level. So are there impacts that you find that other people have on your life that are direct or indirect? And do you find those impacts vice versa within and without your company? I think in a business sense,
Yeah,
in a personal sense.
that's a really, really interesting question. Thanks. I'll try to answer it two ways. So like, I'll start with our work here. We are, one of our things that we do here is when we open the office is the story is Goodyear first sent me for a recognizing the territory, getting the lay of the land for a few months, understanding what we would have here. And I did that for 6 months. Our CTO came back and I presented, we should open an innovation lab in San Francisco. And one of the things I said to him is we should work on new ideas, the new space, but we should also focus on building a new culture. And I don't mean that the current culture at Goodyear is not thinking about sustainability. Actually, they are, and in many, many ways. But we here thought like, okay, we have to be lean. We have to think of our operations in a lean, in a more clean way. And we also have to, let's go and work with companies that are thinking about sustainability in an interesting perspective. And we went and we partnered with those initially, right? We partnered with a company called Envoy, which is all electric vehicles. They put electric vehicles in different facilities and buildings and condominiums, et cetera. And their whole mission is, hey, we have a condominium and you can actually have a swimming pool in LA or San Francisco. But what if you grab that money and you put 4 or 5 electric cars for people to be able to share in that parking lot, in that community? And what we do is we use our platform, Ango, that I think Lauren mentioned at the beginning. We connect to that company. We go and service those cars at location when they need to. So very quickly, we focus mainly on electric cars, which unintentionally made us kind of like this electric car expert right now. And we see hundreds of electric cars every week.
So thank you so much. As a follow-up, I've been trying to understand more about the more computer side of what sustainability could look like. So for context, I'm an environmental science and policy major with a computer science minor. So I'm trying to find intersections between those things. And you've been extremely helpful already in trying to bridge those gaps. But specifically with the car arena, I've been learning about how electric cars, there's a lot of pros and cons to having both, because there's a lot more resources that we need to build them and procure them and put them out in communities. Like you were saying, like it'd be so much smarter to just have 5 cars in a shared area for people to take turns using, instead of everybody having like 3 cars to themselves and then buying a Tesla just so you can plug it in your garage and say that you have a Tesla. It's like there's this weird dichotomy coming up with, like I was saying, also like within communities and personal life, how sometimes people are like, oh, I want to be sustainable because it's the trendy thing to do, and I want to be sustainable because it's the right, quote unquote, right thing to do for the planet. I think that there's a really thin line there that we're muddling when it comes to electric cars, but also a lot of things. And so the question, I guess, is like, what do you think when it comes to using the resources that we already have to make new ideas and innovate new structures for societies, whether electric cars, hybrid cars, whatever that looks like, or recycling things that we've already had in the past and find a new way to use them now? I don't know if that was clear. I kind of went all over the place, but I hope that was...
No, I think it's so interesting. I mean, I think you're touching on things that I personally think about a lot too, right? And I grew up in Costa Rica. It's for those of you who've been there, like Costa Rica is kind of like a little sustainable miracle, because it is definitely like a third world country, but it definitely has like a very progressive mentality when it comes to taking care of the environment. Like we ban hunting, and we have one of the most, the biggest amount of percentage of land that is protected. I think #1 in the world. And there's just all these practices where like, we use renewable energies. I think last year we probably run with renewables for like 2 or 3 years, and we're still going. So, I have that sensibility, and coming to Ohio was a little bit more of a contrast, going back to that industrial, focused industry, the burning river and all these things, right? And those are like really, really big things, and they're embedded in the culture and everything. And when I moved to San Francisco, California is by far not a great example either. Like California is car state. Everybody likes to drive cars and everybody has a lot, right? And if you're in San Francisco, it's a little bubble. Like here, you're like, oh yeah, no, like people are really progressive. You go to LA and people again have 3 cars per garage and a Tesla to just drive around, right? So, but I think that there's 2 things that I definitely noticed in a change, and is like in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, the density of living here creates a awareness of taking care of each other. And I've seen it through COVID-19, which is super interesting, where like at the beginning, our major London breed came out and said, hey, I want to close establishments and I want people wearing masks. And it wasn't that bad. It was like later on when like some other people started saying in other cities, it became like this kind of like, how dare you kind of thing. Here, it was more like, okay, for the betterment of everyone, we got to do these few things. Okay, I get it. Or let me tell you another thing. Since I'm at home all the time, now I'm trying to like recycle everything and grab everything from the yard and start planting things and everything. And here we have our trash provider, Recology, and it's like such an amazing company. Like the way that they train people in San Francisco to, do your compostables and do your recycling, it's like a lot more advanced than what I saw in Cleveland for sure. So I think that I'm seeing that like in a more denser space, people tend to, what I'm seeing in San Francisco, people tend to be, let's say, a lot more communal about how to like take care of the space, right? Because if you do something bad here, like if I go out right now and I try to cut a tree in the backyard, first of all, I cause so much noise to all the neighbors because we're all so jam-packed in this little hill in Bernal Heights in San Francisco that like they're going to call the cops. And secondly, I can't cut a tree in San Francisco. So yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot different personally experience that.
I could talk to you about this forever, but I'm gonna let other people ask their questions. So I'll definitely reach out to you after this call and we can have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I do see some questions in the chat. I know that Elizabeth and also Tiffany have questions, so I will head it over to them.
Tiffany, you can go ahead. You can go first.
Hi, Jose. It's so great to see you. And congratulations, you've had a really crazy 3 years.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
A lot has happened.
A lot has happened.
Yeah, that's
I feel like it was yesterday that I was working out of Tim Box.
I know. It was such a great time. How's Rodrigo?
Good. He is in Akron still.
Oh, yes?
Yeah.
Great. Well, tell him that I
great.
said hello. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So my question is, take it back a little bit. And in thinking about getting your team to San Francisco, was that your decision or your dream? Was it a group dream? Where did you see the difference being made by being in San Francisco? I know you talked about, your relationships with the CEO and having the ability to take your ideas up the food chain. But even prior to that, thinking about, there had to have been a moment in your, in your process that you were like, we really need to break out and do something pretty radical. I'd love to hear if that moment, when it happened, how did you formulate that into something that is in speak to executives or people that don't necessarily understand ideation, design, prototyping at the level that you do? How did you convey that message and what was that process like?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question because as you are describing, like it was only 3 years ago that we were at ThinkBox and we were doing our first kind of moving outside of the headquarter office to do work. And every time that I go back to or talk to a case or meet with somebody at case, I try to draw some comparison between like what was it like there or back when I was there and now. And one thing I learned from Case, and I've been seeing a lot, is culture is so important, and motivation, and giving people the right freedom of space to think differently and be able to just be a lot more relaxed. I personally think that, Michael, that's one of your greatest assets, is like how you make everybody so comfortable and chill in your classes so they can actually just like open up and start talking about, new ideas or new concepts or new, whatever it is. And I this is not a criticism to Goodyear. This is actually just a lot of headquarters are like that, especially in the
Right.
Midwest or the East Coast, where they're, let's say, a lot more formal. Like there's a lot more formalities. There's a lot more of like risk aversion. And you have two options. You either learn how to work in that environment and you work projects that make sense there, or you just have to leave somehow. I think that that's something that I appreciate a lot. I took some classes when I was at Weatherhead from the OB faculty, the organizational behavior around culture change and organizational change. And it was very clear that you needed like an intention to change that. And you needed the right space to do that, right? ThinkBox was that first experiment. Like actually, if you look at the whole timeline of getting to San Francisco, ThinkBox was the first step on the bigger plan, right? Of like being able to, let's get out of the office and let's earn our executives' trust that we can actually do work outside of the offices, and that we can work with different people. So if you recall, we worked with some students and we had to have them sign some agreements because they were going to be working on IP. And that was like the first and like step that we had to move with legal to be able to work and collaborate with different people where we're going to be sharing confidential information. So that again set the first kind of like jurisprudence of like what we would be doing with legal and what we would be doing with future companies. So like what we did at ThinkBox from that legal point of view has been, again, the first step in like many, many more that we have taken ever since with multiple companies that we have to work here, startups and big companies in Silicon Valley. And very quickly, we were working at ThinkBox and I was going to LA a lot to work with this startup. And we realized that, there's just a lot more happening in California, mobility-wise, that was happening in Ohio. And that's like a no-brainer. Ohio is not known for like the mobility, like, revolution, but like Ohio does have other good things, but that one was just not particularly happening in the West. So when we realized that we needed to leave or go to, the West Coast to try to work more, there was always this question of like, well, do you need like a satellite office? Can you just like go every month? Or do you need something else, right? And the change of leaving headquarters to working on ThinkBox was so interesting, especially, and I don't know if you remember, Tiffany, we brought in the executives from North America one day. We had a whole session with them. It was the most different session I've ever had with that group of people. And I just couldn't stop thinking of like, what if we had an office in San Francisco or Silicon Valley? Like, what couldn't we do, bringing the CEO there and doing this whole thing, right? What couldn't we change in terms of like opening people's minds? And I learned also that it's individually, everybody is open to innovation and everybody like thinks that these ideas are great. It's like when you collectively put everybody in a place like, a corporation where they don't want to take risks, So like grabbing like 10 executives and having them take a risk that is new and it's outside of the business model, it is so hard. But if you can grab them separately and show them some stuff and then later on bring them back again outside of the headquarters, either at ThinkBox or at, in San Francisco, and then you have them think about this problem that you're trying to solve in a novel way, that's when they, they break from the chains and go up and say, well, we can do those things, right? So yeah, we definitely started that path and we knew we wanted to land somewhere in Silicon Valley, but it definitely took a lot of little steps, baby steps to get there.
We miss you here. That was such a fun summer.
I miss you guys too. Thank you. It was so much fun. I definitely agree on that.
So
Thank you.
We did get a question sent in from LinkedIn. I believe her name is Frey Watt. Asks, have you ever made a wrong decision in your career? And if yes, how did you handle it?
Yeah, so sorry, my internet just went a little choppy, so my video will come back in a minute. Yeah, absolutely. So I make wrong decisions every day. um, it's a matter of like, how can you actually understand what a wrong decision is and what impact it will have in your team or organization. Um, when we came here, and very quickly we decided to build a digital platform that would signify a future business for Goodyear, and we identified what it was. I very, very clearly realized that I was completely out of my comfort element, because I do like design, digital design, and all that work, but this was going to be a lot different. This was going to be a lot more challenging, and that kind of puts you. It's like a fish out of water. You have to kind of go and like be very humble and realize that you need a lot more help that you thought you need, and you're going to be making on a daily basis a lot of mistakes around, I don't know, data infrastructure or cybersecurity, et cetera, data platforms too. But the way of doing that is keep it simple, stay humble, surround yourself with smarter people that you are, and listen to them. And that's how I think you can overcome making bigger mistakes by solving them quicker, on a daily basis.
You're absolutely right. I think everyone could definitely take that advice to heart. So I do see in the chat that there's one, we have a couple more minutes. Bob has a question. If you'd like to unmute and ask your question.
Sure. Hi. Yeah, I do. This is Bob Sopko. I run LaunchNet at Case, and I do remember when Goodyear was there and you guys running around, and it was awesome. So Plug and Play Tech Center, I believe, and I don't know if it's still going on. Do you still have a relationship with them? Because I've worked with them extensively in the med area, and we had like about 10 people from Cleveland coming out there. They're now working with Progressive Insurance, Cleveland Clinic, and also university hospitals.
Yeah, we're still part of that. Plug and Play is really, really interesting. This whole ecosystem in Silicon Valley is very interesting, because what happened was you had like these huge companies that had been here forever, or huge companies that came here a long time ago. Like, let's say long time ago, now it's like 10, 15, 20 years ago. And then you have a group of companies that started coming here 5, 10 years ago. And what I mean group of companies, I mean like, your Goodyear kind of size companies, or tier 1 automotive suppliers from like Europe or Japan or China. And as all these companies were coming in, they need to, what I kind of like to think is like graduating from, being a complete newbie in Silicon Valley into like bigger leagues of like being able to either invest in startups or do joint investments. And, there's like a lateral, ladder that you have to go up to be able to get to that point of maturity. Plug and Play is really great when you just land in Silicon Valley and you're like, what am I doing here? How do I deal with this ecosystem? Because if you don't, then it's like drinking water from a fire hose. It's like, there's so much you can do here. So many meetings, there's so many distractions, there's so many events, there's so much knowledge that you
Jose, we seem to have lost your audio.
Do you have my audio back?
Now we got you back. Yeah. Now we get your audio back. Yeah.
All right, I'll turn the video in a second. Where was I?
Just explaining the drinking from a fire hose of just so much going on. If you don't partner up, it could be overwhelming.
Exactly. So, coming like, being a company that came in there and we were like, okay, what do we do? Who do we talk to? How are we going to do this? And we still didn't have like a whole like thesis on how, we wanted to work in Silicon Valley. Plug and Play was this perfect partner to kind of help you be part of the ecosystem. They put you in what they call cohorts with other corporates, and they show you hundreds of companies a year. You see them, you rate them, and then you get to meet with the ones that you think are the best. And then you do pilots or proof of concepts with them. So we did that for like the first, we still work with them. During COVID, we put it on pause, but we still work with them and we still see companies with them. What we've done is like be less of that company that needed a lot of hand-holding to more like use plug and play as a tech scout organization that can just look at companies in an area. So I can go in and say, I'm really interested in lidars, or I'm really interested in robotics for this thing. What companies do you guys have? So they come back to us and they do deal flows or demo days with us, where they show us 10, 20 companies in that area, and then we decide what to work. And the reason why they were really helpful at the beginning is we were at that stage where it was kind of like more of a, think about it like maybe preschool, pre-kinder, elementary school time, where like we were just figuring it out. We then like went to middle school and we were still working with them, but we started being more independent and doing more things on our own. And I think now we're like graduating high school around that time because we, from our office, we started and we proposed and got it approved later last year, a investment fund of $100 million that is being displayed over the next 10 years. So that just gave us, by definition, a lot of deal flow on our own. So we just don't use plug and play here as we used to, but we do have like a very close knit relationship with them because of what it meant for us from the beginning. But I would recommend, I recommend plug and play to any new company that is moving to the Bay Area as a good introduction to the space.
Okay, yeah, and just for students on the call, we do some internships through CASE, and we actually have had 2 graduates work with them.
Super.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Jose, for coming on to this chat. You've definitely given all of us a lot to think about and great advice, especially for the students on this Zoom. To quickly wrap up, I just wanted to ask if there are, as Bob actually just said, internship positions with ANGO specifically, or Goodyear as a whole.
So there are, in our careers page, Goodyear, you can go in and find internships. There are a lot, and a lot of them are in the engineering side. I remember that when I did my internship at Goodyear, I joined that week and there was like 200 other people joining that week. So there's normally the summer internships are huge in Akron. I haven't, for a reason of bandwidth, done internships in San Francisco yet. We're focusing a lot on the growth of the team in a very foundational way. So right now, I think we're reaching 22, 23 people. A lot of them are experienced software developers, experienced designers, operations people.
We lost your audio again, I think.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well, just I'll give you guys Jose's cell phone number. You can just call him about your internship.
Maybe you lost the audio a little bit.
I just said while you were gone, I said, I'm going to give everybody your cell phone number. They can just call you directly. Anytime. He's up all night, so you can call me.
Oh man, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind. No, we've been out. It's so hot in the Bay Area right now that the whole electrical grid is unstable. And I don't know if that affects the internet, but it's also generating really bad internet issues in the last kind of 3 days. So yeah, sorry about that.
It was awesome here in Cleveland. You got to come back. You know, the Wall Street Journal was talking about everybody who's leaving the Bay Area. This is the time. We're waiting for you.
Oh my God. Can you imagine with the rent here, if I go back? Oh my God.
Come on. Like the 22 people on the Zoom call will all take turns babysitting for your daughter. So,
Thank you guys. And it's not me.
Exactly. So let me thank Lauren, you first for moderating. It's awesome. And actually one of my favorite things about setting up this format is giving our great students like Lauren a chance to flex their moderator muscles. So it was good. You did an awesome job. Thank you for doing that. Jose, it's always great to connect. I mean, as evidenced by all the friends that you have that joined for this, you made a big impact during your short time at the university, but then in Northeast Ohio. And we do hope to see you back on campus in Cleveland soon.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
let me just share a couple of advertisements for our free events. So, so tomorrow, actually at the same time at 1 o'clock, for those of you that want to learn about the business of wine, Tiffany McNamara. So my friend Courtney Kingston is a friend of mine from undergraduate who actually worked in tech, went to Stanford Business School, and then got into a vineyard. And Jose, you didn't go to Chile with us. You went to Morocco, right?
I went to Morocco, yeah.
So actually I guess the year after you went, we went to Chile and we visited Kingston Family Vineyard. So Courtney will be with us tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
And then on Wednesday at 2 o'clock, we have something called the Veale Skills Lab. And two of our colleagues, or Julie's colleagues, but all of our colleagues, Drew Poppleton and Maggie Smith, are going to do a session called Marketing Your Project, Marketing Yourself. So that will be on Wednesday at 2 o'clock. So with that, thanks everybody for joining. And thanks again, Jose and Lauren, and we will see you soon.